Welcome, Pod.
Welcome back into the Chris Mathis podcast. Chris Mathis back here with Spencer Mathis once more as we continue to talk about what's going on in the world of sports right now. Obviously, a lot just happened, Spence. Last night we saw Domingo Germán pitch a no-hitter last night, a perfect game against the Oakland Athletics last night at the New York Yankees. And obviously an incredible feat there for Domingo Germán. I know that this guy had been struggling throughout the season as far as his last 3 or 4 starts. I think he's really struggled, but, he had a big performance against the Oakland Athletics, a team that the Rays did not have a big performance against.
Yeah, and Germán earlier this season was the first pitcher to be taken out of a game due to using stuff that's like spider tech, which was a big issue a couple of years ago. If you think back to 2021, whenever Garrett Cole was with the Houston Astros, and he started off the season 19-0 with like a 1.3 ERA. That was like the peak of the spider tech era. Same thing with the pitcher that plays in Japan now. I'm blanking on his name, but Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer as well was also using the spider tech. And Domingo Germán earlier this season had issues. And like you said, he's also had issues on the mound recently in terms of not going very long in his games, giving up tons of runs. Of course, he's playing the Oakland Athletics, but a perfect game is something that hasn't been done since 2012. And to have a perfect game, you have to be completely on your A game. He had 9 strikeouts, no walks, of course, no hits. I think he did it in just over 100 pitches, which is very impressive through 9 innings, especially with the 9 strikeouts to go along with that. But, I mean, Germán is a guy that has had issues in the past, considering he's had domestic abuse issues. He's had the spider tech issues. He's kind of a guy that you don't really want to root for. But for the first time in 11 years, there's been a perfect game in the MLB. Of course, there was almost one, I think, 7 years ago with Max Scherzer, in which they whoever he was pitching against, the batter leaned into a hit by pitch to one, and that was with 2 strikes as well. But it would have been nice to see a guy like that. Instead, it's Domingo Germán, who's had a ton of issues, and that's the first perfect game in 11 years. So it's a big thing to do, especially. It doesn't really matter who you're playing up against in the MLB or any sport to go with that, along with that matter, because a perfect game just obviously hasn't happened in 11 years. There's 162 games per season for each team. There's 28 teams in the league. That's tons of games where there could have been a perfect game, and to not have one in 11 years, regardless of, I mean, if he was using any substance or anything like that, it doesn't really matter, I guess, because, I mean, a perfect game just doesn't happen. It's very few and far between, and it's a big thing for the Yankees. You hate to see it as a Rays fan, or just really anybody that's not a Yankees fan does not like to see this. But, of course, it's against the Oakland Athletics, so a lot of people are saying, hey, that it's against the worst team in baseball history. Who really cares? But either way, I mean, doesn't happen often. It's a big thing for Domingo Germán. That's huge for him because, I mean, to put that on your resume, considering that it barely ever happens, is really cool for him, especially in a year where he's been struggling, and probably the Yankees were probably not looking at bringing him back due to his character issues, the spider tech, and that'll be interesting once the Yankees are out of the race, probably the beginning of September.
Yeah, it was an 11-0 victory over the Athletics for the Yankees last night, and it was the most runs scored by a team in a perfect game in Major League Baseball history as well. So talk about the Yankees, their offense, and the 11-0 shutout. And on top of that, it was in Oakland, so that just adds to the fact that he was able to get that done. And also, that was just the 3rd perfect game in Yankees history. The last one was by David Cone back in July 18 of 1999. So it's been a while for the Yankees and a perfect game. And in addition to that, it was an incredible performance there. He's just the 24th pitcher in history of Major League Baseball to throw a perfect game. So we did get to witness history. And, this guy's had, as you said, to be able to add that to your resume after having a tough stretch of starts, the last couple of starts he's had, his last couple of outings. This definitely helps out because his last start prior to the perfect game last night was against the Mariners. He threw just 3 1/3 inning, 8 hits allowed, 10 runs allowed, 8 earned runs, 4 home runs, walked 2 with a 5.10 ERA.
Yeah, right there. It's safe to say that the spider tech is back with him or some substance. I'd be interested to check to see how many times he was checked last night by the umpires in front of their dugout, because to go from that to a perfect game, regardless of who you're playing, regardless of competition, is a very wild jump, considering you said he gave up 3 or 4 home runs. 10 runs in 3 1/3 is like incredibly terrible. And the next game, got there, you throw 9 innings, just over 100 pitches, 9 strikeouts, nothing else. And that's, I mean, of course, earlier this season, if you remember the Yankees, one of the Yankees media teams, like I'm pretty sure you talked about that on iHeartRadio, was talking about how the Rays are a cheating lab. And then they have a guy that has been using Spider Tack for the last couple of years. And even just 2 months ago, he was ejected and suspended 10 games for using Spider Tack. And here he is coming back to throw a complete game. So I think that is a thing that should be put into question here in terms of this guy may have been using illegal substances to do this, especially after, what he's done on and off the field recently.
And obviously, talking about a pitcher who just threw a perfect game, something that we never see. It's been since Felix Hernandez back in 2012, the Seattle Mariners that threw a perfect game. But in addition to pitchers and around Major League Baseball, Spence, we saw former Toronto Blue Jay who had an incredible, journey there with the Blue Jays, got sent down to the some Florida Complex League.
Florida Rookie Complex League.
He struggled 2 2/3 innings earlier this week. 10 hits, 11 earned runs, 2 walks, just 3 strikeouts for the guy. And I had heard some kind of podcast where he allegedly showed up to spring this summer weighing 315. He's listed at 285, weighing 315 as a Major League Baseball pitcher. It's, I think that if you watched him start against the Rays earlier this season, you would see that he was struggling to, stay with endurance throughout the game. He struggled during his start, not only with his numbers, but as far as physicality and staying, with breath and trying to do things. And he struggled this year. They sent him down, and he faced a couple of 18-year-olds, some 19-year-olds, some 20-year-olds earlier this week in his first start in this rookie ball league, the Florida Complex League Yankees. And he got lit up, man, like a firework on the 4th of July.
Yeah, he picked the wrong year to gain 30 pounds in the offseason, considering the pitch clock was just introduced in Major League Baseball. Of course, in the minor leagues, and I don't know if he went to college baseball or whatnot, but in Division I, there has been a pitch clock, or at least some sort of loose rules about a pitch clock. So he has played with the pitch clock before, but to put on 30 pounds and try and keep up with how fast the pace of the game is now is just unlucky for him that he decided to do that this offseason. And the thing with him is he's only been in the league for 2 or 3 years, and he was dominating his first 2 years. So maybe something happened off the field that could have really set him off here, because gaining 30 pounds and then going out there for the Blue Jays and just being the worst pitcher in the major leagues is a terrible transition from what Alek Manoah has been through his first 2 or 3 years in the major leagues. And to go down to the rookie ball over there in Florida, the Complex League, and go 2 1/3 against, like you said, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, probably some 17-year-olds sprinkled in there, is kind of showing that this could be the spell of his career if he can't make his way out of the Florida Complex League. That reminds me of Trevor Bauer over there in Japan, who's been struggling as well. Those two guys are on similar paths right now. But of course, Trevor Bauer is 30-something years old. Manoah probably 24, 25 at this point. I'm not sure exactly how old he is, but he's only been in the league for, I think, since 2020 or 2021 was his rookie season. So he's got a little bit of time to turn around, but he's got to go back. He's got to lose some weight. Of course, a lot of the pitchers, even going back to CC Sabathia, played around 300 pounds. And he said one year he got down to 250 pounds and noticed that his fastball was 70 miles per hour. So they've got to have weight whenever you're a big pitcher. And that's how you've been your whole life. If you lose weight, you're going to lose a lot of your power. So Manoah's got to stay around the 285, hopefully maybe even go down to like 275. But of course, his stamina endurance has been an issue this season. And if that's an issue in the Florida Complex Rookie League, then you've got more issues than just baseball.
Yeah, I almost want to trigger you've got mail, but in reality, you've got problems, Alek Manoah. And obviously, you bring up his age and the fact that he did play college baseball at West Virginia University. He's just 25 years old, turns 26 here at the start. He's born the same year as I was, man. And the guy just, I don't know if you look online, he's listed at 260. And he's from Florida, so he knows, about the heat and the endurance that it's going to take here in a rookie ball league that he's having right now in the state of Florida. And, I hope he turns it around, because this guy, just last year during the All-Star Game was so much fun. He was mic'd up, and I loved watching that. And I thought, man, I'm a fan of this guy. And then to see him this year not only stink it up, but get really demoted, if you will, to a rookie ball league was just sad to see. And I hope he turns it around for his career. He's only 25. It'd be different if he was like 33, 34, been in the league for a very long time. But in this case, I do feel differently about this. And again, the Chris Mathers podcast brought to you by Ivy Log Meat Processing, newly renovated shop with great staff. Booking harvest dates right now. Contact David and the crew. You can do so at 706-745-0011, or read the description down below. It's easy as that. Visit ivylogmeatprocessing.com. Again, ivylogmeatprocessing.com. They bring you another edition of TCM Pod right here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, everywhere and anywhere in between. And we appreciate you guys joining us. But we do have some other things to get into here, including an incredibly embarrassing story regarding star wide receiver now for the Miami Dolphins and Tyreek Hill and what happened to him recently. And it's embarrassing. We'll get into that. And this guy's had a troubling history dating back to several years ago. And for him to be able to just do what he just did that we saw this week is ridiculous, but we'll have more on that here in just a moment. But Spence, All-Star Game comes up here second week of July 11th, MLB All-Star Game. The voting just ended earlier today. How do you kind of view the All-Star Game in Major League Baseball? Obviously, the Pro Bowl is irrelevant now. The NBA All-Star Game is irrelevant now. And then the NHL All-Star Game has also really dropped off a lot. And you guys can weigh in too. Tweet us or comment to us on Instagram at @TCM_pod regarding this. But how do you kind of view the MLB All-Star Game that they have in place right now? And obviously, we had a couple of Rays competing there and a couple of the faces of Major League Baseball. Shohei Ohtani is going to be headlining that as well. And we all know about the star power and the All-Star Game.
Yeah, I mean, looking around sports in America, you look at the NFL, like you just said, the Pro Bowl is absolutely awful at this point. They're even switching it now to kind of mini games instead of games, which is probably even a better thing than what they had going. But what they had previously was fun to watch, at least heading up all the way to like 2012. But then all of a sudden they decide that these players can't take any contact for some reason, and they ruin the Pro Bowl there. Then you look over at the NHL, and that's kind of, at least for the last 10 years as well, has always been a shit show in the NHL in terms of these games are going to like 15-10. The goalies aren't really trying at all. Nobody wants to risk injury. Of course, you're on ice skates. A lot of big guys flying around, the best in the league, and that's the thing where there's a ton of skill gap in hockey. And if all the best players are on the same ice at the same time, players are going to get hurt if they go full speed. So that one's ruined as well. The NBA, even the regular season at this point, is kind of not fun to watch. So, of course, you're going to look at the All-Star break. And, I mean, the NBA All-Star Game is probably the worst of the three if I had to put anything to it, because basketball is already hard enough to watch in the first place if there's really nothing to watch for, if they're not playing for anything. And with the All-Star Game, I think that they play like Team LeBron and Team something else every year, which is just stupid. So in terms of that, the MLB All-Star Game is probably the best out of the four major sports in America. And it's only because it seems like the players try a little bit more. It's a game simulation basically. So it's turned up the 10 in terms of looking around American sports the other three ways, because they have mic'd up players. And the big thing with them is they don't just do the All-Star Game. They also have the Home Run Derby, which is a huge hit each and every year. And hopefully the Rays will get Randy Arozarena in there this season, which would be fun to watch because he's one of baseball's favorite players. And I mean, I think the All-Star Game does it right. And it's usually in a very nice location. I think last year, I believe it was in Miami, which is a super nice stadium. Nobody really ever goes to Miami to their stadium to watch the All-Star games, or I mean, to watch a regular season game, but they'll go to watch the All-Star game. And I think the All-Star game is probably the best out of the four major sports in America. And it's also good with fan voting because it seems like, aside from the other sports in which the most loved fan will win in every single category, it doesn't seem like it's that same thing with MLB. If you just look at Twitter culture with the Major League Baseball, the sport in itself, in which people will say, hey, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. does not deserve to be starting at first base in the All-Star Game, and these Torontoans are kind of screwing over Yandy Diaz of the Tampa Bay Rays. And then you see a lot of the MLB fans get together and look at the statistics and see that Yandy Diaz is playing 10 times better than Vlad Jr. is this season. And I mean, Yandy Diaz obviously should be the starting first baseman, and I think that's what we see now after the All-Star voting has just ended. You have Randy Arozarena starting in the outfield, which he should, and you also got Yandy Diaz starting at first base, which he should. So that's a big thing also there with the fan voting. It's not too biased, and in the other sports it is. So that's a good thing with the All-Star Game. I think the All-Star Game is definitely the best. Most fun to watch, honestly, as well, because now that they mic'd up the players, it's fun to see within the game. Also, they have the umpire camera view that's kind of been released this season, in which the entire College Baseball World Series, if you got a glimpse of any of that, I think every single pitch that I saw, they used the umpire cam. So hopefully we'll get to see that in the All-Star Game a lot, and I think it'll be fun. So I think the All-Star Game is the best out of the four major sports and something to watch, even if you don't even if you don't like love watching baseball, it's something you can turn on, watch in the background, just like you can with any baseball game, because it's basically an MLB game simulation.
Yeah, and on top of that, one thing that I do love about the Major League Baseball All-Star Game in comparison to the others, as you referenced when it came to the NBA, is the fact that they are in their respective divisions as far as American League and National League. And, that makes it easy as a fan to be able to follow along. It's not confusing, hey, where's my favorite player at? Or, hey, where is Aaron Judge at? Or, hey, where is Shane McClanahan at? Or Shohei Ohtani? You just know because of their leagues and the divisions that they're in. And that really helps as a casual fan too, because of the superstars, the faces of Major League Baseball, and then to know, okay, well, he's going to be in the same division. He's in the American League. He's going to play for the American League team. I think that's a good play there for Major League Baseball. Now, as far as the home run derby is concerned, we've seen some guys compete in the derby and lose their swing because it is a whole entirely different pitch speed. And you're able to knock that ball out of the park. And we know of players that have done it in the past. How do you feel about, if you were to get spoken to and you were a Major League Baseball player, hey, when you want to compete in the Major League Baseball All-Star Game home run derby, I'm going to say no. I'm not going to ruin my team's season or ruin my current hot streak like Randy Arozarena. He said he would compete. It would be fun to watch, but I don't think that it would be beneficial for the team or for him moving forward after the All-Star Game. I think most people would agree with me on that as well, as this, in regards to the pitch speed and the swing adjustments you have to make after being in the groove of things throughout the season. Randy Arozarena has killed it this year, and for him to go out there and try to adjust his swing to a meatball down the middle of the plate is it's not realistic whatsoever.
Yeah, well, the thing is it is a good thing for Randy Arozarena, especially if you win the home run derby, because it's more watched than the game itself, and you gain a lot of fans, you gain a lot of interactions.
So popularity is more important than success at the plate.
Popularity is very important in baseball, especially him coming up near his contract season. He's going to have to be paid soon. Randy Arozarena, one of baseball's most beloved players, should be a candidate for the home run derby this season. And if I'm him, I'm also going to do the home run derby as well, because I've seen that people always say it messes up the swing, but a lot of the guys that compete in the home run derby are already guys that strike out a lot. They hit a lot of home runs. It really doesn't mess up your swing that much. And Randy Arozarena, aside from this season, has been that guy. This season, the thing with Randy Arozarena is that he can take ball 4 now. And last season, he couldn't. He would chase everything. Once you get to a 3-2 count, he looked like the most uncomfortable hitter at the plate of all time. This season, you see him taking so many pitches. He's up there in walks drawn this year, at least among American League outfielders. He's basically first in almost every statistical category, at least top 5 in all of baseball in the outfield position. So I think Randy Arozarena should 1,000,000% compete in the home run derby, because he is a guy that has a ton of pop, and I don't see it messing up his swing that much. I mean, obviously it may mess up your swing just a little bit, but just think about all the players that are not competing in the All-Star Game and are sitting on their couch at home, really not doing anything for the week off that they're getting. Those guys are also going to come back sluggish. So for Arozarena to come back with a little bit of batting practice, because that's all the home run derby is batting practice, and the odds of him going the full distance and winning the thing are very low. But if he does, it would be huge for his popularity. And even if he doesn't, it's basically just taking batting practice, which MLB players take before each and every game. So I don't really think that it really messed up your swing that much. And I believe Arozarena. I hope Arozarena's in it, because I'd love to watch that.
Oh, yeah, obviously I want to watch it. But as far as, my success with the team, I'm not too sure. We'll have to find out. There's only one way to do so, and we'll find out if he, number 1, gets asked to do it. Number 2, he's already said that he wants to compete in it if he's asked. And number 3, we'll see how he does in the performance at the All-Star Game. But in addition to that, we do know regarding Wander Franco and the story here that's been brewing in Tampa, Florida, of course, with your Rays, and with Wander Franco, 22-year-old phenom who's now in the headlines for his actions. We saw him get removed from the lineup last Friday. Obviously, I work at WDAE iHeartRadio Tampa Bay with Ronnie and T. Krez, and I hear a lot of the noise, and I hear a lot of the word from guys within the building as far as what's happening. But for you, as an outsider looking in, you're also 22 years old, just like Wander Franco. The only difference is that he was handed $4 million at the age of 16 and now has a massive contract. How do you view the Wander Franco situation in regards to him needing to be a better teammate moving forward? And the team disciplined him, and they made it public as well.
Yeah, I really don't think it's that big of a deal in terms of, like you just said, since he's been 16 years old, he's been baseball's number 1 prospect. So he's always been in the limelight. And the thing with him is he's really never struggled at the plate. And even this season, of course, he struggled a little bit recently, but his batting average is still hovering around 300, which is very good. He's baseball's best shortstop, at least defensively, by far. By far, there's literally nobody even close to him in terms of defense. And at the plate, he's having a very successful season. So for him to start slumping and then also show some character issues in the clubhouse, I'd be interested to see if it's been the whole season or if it's just been the last month or so. Because obviously, if you've been watching the games, he hasn't performed as well. Because at one point this season, he was hitting 320 or 330. Now he's down, I think, to around 290 or just sitting between 290 and 300 for the last couple of weeks. So you can see it just based off of TV. He struck out recently in a game that I was watching, ran over to the dugout, looks like he's going to swing his bat at the wall, and then the camera cuts off of it. So obviously there's something going on with him just a little bit. And like you said, I mean, he's just 22 years old. He's been handed a ton of money. And a lot of people are questioning really what does he really have to play for? But that's really not the thing with a guy that's been in baseball his whole life. He's not a guy that's just going to quit out there. He's not a first baseman. He has to hone in on his craft. He's still a great shortstop. He's still probably the best shortstop in baseball, at least at the moment. I don't care about Bo Bichette because the guy isn't even near Wander Franco's defensive abilities. And I don't really think it's that big of an issue. I mean, the 2-game benching, of course, probably upset him, but it didn't seem to upset him too much because the first game, of course, he's not allowed on the bench. The second game, he sits on the bench fully dressed the entire time. Doesn't play, of course, because he's been benched. The third game, he comes back, hits a home run on the 5th pitch. So I don't think it really affected Wander Franco. Of course, we're going to see this as the season develops in terms of is he still having character issues with the locker room? Probably just butting heads with another guy who has issues. Probably Jose Siri. Those two guys seem to have the most, at least, uncontrollable hothead on the team. But it doesn't seem like, I mean, we've just heard these reports so far from Wander Franco. But before this, did you really think that there was any character issues with this guy? Because, I mean, I've watched nearly every game this season, or at least a glimpse of every game this season. And I didn't really notice anything with him. So I think that this is just coming out of the locker room recently just because he has been playing worse. He's probably been taking his bat out on it, probably hitting his bat up against the wall. Probably they cut from that. We didn't get to see it. But I don't think it's that big of an issue. And, I mean, if he does it again, I would obviously backtrack and say that this is not looking good for Franco. But I don't think he will. I mean, a 2-game suspension. He's put in timeout, 22 years old. He'll be fine. Basically, in terms of how old he is in Major League Baseball compared to the rest of the players at 22 years old, he's basically still a teenager if you look at it that way in terms of most players in the Major League Baseball. I mean, Yandy Diaz, 31 years old, Jose Siri hovering around 30, Randy Arozarena himself, 28, Brandon Lau, 29. I mean, the rest of the team is 6 to 7 years older than this guy. And, of course, he's going to have some issues. Like you said, he's been paid so much money. But I don't think it's that big of an issue in terms of the season moving forward. He's still one of the best players in all of baseball, and people love to watch him. So I don't really think it's an issue, and I think the Rays are going to be completely fine, especially with this All-Star break coming up. I'm not sure if he made the All-Star team, didn't see that. Hopefully he did. I mean, maybe a secondary behind Bo Bichette just because he's been so productive.
Yeah, he's behind Bichette, yep.
Yeah, but, I mean, the break should do him some good. He'll play a little bit in the All-Star game, get to interact with a lot of other players, and I think that once we come back around mid-July, it's going to be completely fine.
Well, I also know, there have been a couple of situations. Yeah, Wander Franco hit the home run on Saturday, Spencer, but he rounded the bases, trotted around third, and Luke Raley gave him a knuckles or a high five, and then Randy Arozarena was in the on-deck circle, and he steps out of Wander's way. And that's where the alleged beef has been, is Wander Franco and Randy Arozarena. And then you do the math and you figure things out. Randy Arozarena is a little bit older. He's trying to get that huge contract that Wander Franco already has. Obviously, there's, age discrepancy there regarding Wander Franco has a long career ahead of him as far as him just being 22. And you look at Randy, I think 28, 29 years old. And Randy has Randy Land out in left field, and Randy Land is booming. It is the attraction to see at Tropicana Field. There's not much else to see there at Tropicana Field, but Randy Land is cool on Friday nights when the Rays host at Tropicana. And, I think there's some jealousy when it comes to Wander Franco and Randy Arozarena, or as far as what he's able to get accomplished regarding, the media attention, the All-Star voting, because, Randy Arozarena did finish at the top of his position in All-Star voting. He is one of those top 3 outfielders. As far as Wander Franco, not there. He's behind Bo Bichette, and he's not making the All-Star game. So there could be a little bit of jealousy there. And then on top of that, Spencer, they did a Randy Arozarena soccer jersey last weekend giveaway at the Rays game at the Trop because his brother plays for the Tampa Rowdies, and Randy loves soccer too. And during batting practice that day, the only player not to wear the Randy Arozarena soccer jersey was Wander Franco last weekend. This is after the alleged suspension of Wander Franco. So this is after it's all said and done and moved on, and then Wander Franco not wearing his teammate's jersey. And then after Franco hits a homer, Randy's in the on-deck circle and steps out of his way and lets him walk on. And I don't know, man. There's something there. Now, obviously, it can get fixed, but this is going to be something that's going to be overanalyzed for a long time to come.
Yeah, but the thing is, does it really matter? Has it really affected the team that much? Because those are two of the Rays' most productive players on offense and defense this season. I don't really see it. I mean, baseball is a sport where the best reliever in baseball was a locker room cancer for 5 or 6 years in Aroldis Chapman. No matter where he went, he was a terrible person, but he was the best relief pitcher in baseball. And I don't really think that it matters that much if one of your best players is a bit of a drama queen, at least in baseball. I mean, obviously, they're both going to have to get that fixed. There's probably more Wander Franco, considering he's just 22 years old, probably got some tip from Randy Arozarena he didn't like, or like you said, could be a feud over contract in the future. But as long as we don't see this one more time this season, I think we're fine. If we do, I mean, of course, it's not going to be okay between those two, but the Rays are going to move on. The Rays are still going to be a very good team. And hopefully, once they hit October, like a lot of other sports, the teams will come together. I mean, you look at the Golden State Warriors with Draymond Green and Jordan Poole, who they just traded away, of course, because of the situation. They came together and played very good in the playoffs. Of course, they end up getting swept, or they end up getting beat by the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James. But I mean, they gave the Lakers a run for their money in a year where the Warriors were not at their best, and those two guys seemed to get along as the season goes on. Of course, after the season ended, Jordan Poole was the odd man out. Draymond Green was still there, but we'll see how that goes with the Rays and Randy Arozarena and Wander Franco. But I think the Rays are a team that is going to be playing for the pennant this year, at least in the AL, and they hopefully will be in the World Series versus the Atlanta Braves this season. Maybe even get to catch a game if I put my car on the line.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely, you might have to do so. But so real talk, I think that if this does continue, not only multiple times, but even one more time down the stretch, especially when it comes crunch time for the Rays, because they are actually technically not right now. They do not have the best record in Major League Baseball anymore, but they're still, viewed as the best team in Major League Baseball. The Atlanta Braves right there. We'll see that matchup next week here at Tropicana Field. I'm excited for that. We have guys and girls night out with Ronnie and T-Kraz and the Suite on Friday against the Braves. Should be fun right here at Tropicana Field. But if this continues, with a team like this, I think having a so-called locker room cancer, this one situation they're having to deal with and grow and learn from is concerning to me, and it does worry me. Does that worry you regarding a World Series potential here with the Tampa Bay Rays as they finally look to get over that hump and win their first?
Yeah, it's good to get this out in June. It's better to get this out in June than it is in September or October. And the thing that kind of made a lot of Rays fans feel better about the situation was what Wander Franco said about Zach Eflin, one of the Rays' best starting pitchers this season. Is you just got to brush off whatever's being said to you. You got to brush that off and continue playing and moving forward. And Wander Franco seemed to take the suspension well, seemed to play better after the suspension. Of course, him and Randy Arozarena are going to take some time to get together and be okay as a partnership. But lucky for them, they're not playing really near each other. Of course, Franco's a shortstop, and Arozarena's over there in left field or right field for the most part. So I don't see it that much of an issue. Of course, in baseball, it's 1 versus 9 for most of the game. And then whenever they're in the defensive position with each other, they're really not going to come anywhere close to each other. So they should be completely fine as long as they can set differences aside as the game starts. I don't really see it as that big of an issue.
All right, guys, continuing here on the Chris Mathis podcast brought to you by Ivy Log Meat Processing. One more story here. We are running out of time. I'm at work. Spencer has something to tend to as well today with his girlfriend, Nia, but we're going to get into a crazy situation regarding Tyreek Hill. Famous, he is the fastest. He's the cheetah wide receiver in the NFL. Tyreek Hill back in the headlines, and we've heard of Tyreek Hill not only in the headlines for his numbers, but for past allegations and alleged domestic violence too. In years past. Now, this was several years ago, but now a story came about in which Tyreek Hill boarded a charter boat, a fishing boat, without being invited recently. according to Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office for potential charges. So let's see here. They're still reviewing the case involving this, but the alleged altercation says that 2 women accompanying Hill reportedly boarded a private fishing boat without permission. The boat captain, upon returning from the marina's gas station, discovered, their presence and asked them to get off the boat. They got into a heated, argument, which led into some physicality as well, a couple of slappings, and Tyreek Hill slapped this guy, this boat captain, and then offered to pay him $200. And initially, there were not going to be any charges pressed, but then a few days later, charges have been pressed from this guy. So Tyreek Hill back in the headlines. How big is this, not only for Hill off the field, but for the Miami Dolphins, who have such a great roster this year, high expectation if Tua Tagovailoa can stay healthy in Miami this season?
Yeah, I mean, of course, Tyreek Hill is an NFL player, so he's going to completely get away with this. It's not going to be that big of a deal, at least for him on the field. But, of course, this guy probably went home, probably talked to some of his closest family members and friends and was like, yeah, I got slapped by Tyreek Hill at work today. Then they're like, what'd you do about it? And he's like, Tyreek Hill offered me $200. And he goes, the rest of his family and friends probably told him he needs more money from Tyreek Hill because that's an NFL player. He's had issues in the past, like you said. At one point, he broke his son's arm and got away with it. So this, of course, is not going to be a big issue for Tyreek Hill, at least in terms of playing on the field. But it should be a huge issue money-wise because this guy should sue the shit out of Tyreek Hill for this. I mean, he sneaks onto a boat illegally, and then he slaps the captain. I mean, of course, in front of 2 women, it's an odd option to go with a slap for Tyreek Hill, in my opinion. Maybe should have gone with a punch. Probably lost a lot of respect there with those 2 women, but we'll see how that goes because Tyreek Hill should be in trouble, at least financially, for this decision because with the issues in the past, hopefully he's on some sort of short leash with the law. Probably not because he's in the NFL, and every NFL player will get away with basically anything unless it's Aaron Hernandez who murdered somebody. I mean, you even go back to Ray Lewis. This guy murdered somebody, at least very allegedly. I mean, it's
allegedly. Yeah, we do want to include the allegedly, even with the Tyreek Hill broken arm thing. Allegedly.
With Ray Lewis, and the thing with Tyreek Hill is he is the one that broke his child's arm, and he is the guy who slapped this guy. No, he did break his son's arm, and he is the guy who slapped this guy in the face. So he should be in trouble for this. I don't think it's going to be any issue on the field for Tyreek Hill. Of course, he's in Miami. Miami's got a terrible culture around it already, and the Dolphins, I don't think you're going to have to worry about this as the season goes on. So for Tyreek Hill, hopefully he gets sued, at least in terms of that for the boat captain. But we'll see how this goes. Probably not have to do anything at all.
All right, guys, that is another edition of the Chris Mathis Podcast. I hope that you guys enjoy your holiday weekend. Couple of things we didn't get into here regarding NFL. Spence wanted to get into the AFC West as well and expectations for the season. But you know what? In a little bit over a week, it's going to be a very dead period regarding Major League Baseball. The NBA is over with, NHL. So we're going to shelve that and talk an entire show of football and our expectations for this season, including the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Broncos, as well as the Chargers. Yes, that's right, with Justin Herbert. So we'll get more into that here next week right here on the podcast. But enjoy your 4th of July. Stay safe, and we will talk to you guys then.